Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 5. So today is a asynchronous day where we have a series of recorded videos for you all to watch. Just as sort of a heads up about how to go through these. So we have a series of different videos that are a little bit interrelated, but also a little bit distinct from one another. In this particular video, I'm going to cover an overview of the final project, which I know seems really far away, but you'll see as we go along why it's important that we cover it this early because we're going to get going on it. There are a couple of videos by Dr. Jeckett on reference managers and Covidence specifically, which is the software we're going to ask you to use for your final project. And then there are also two what we're calling EBP exemplars in action, which are just examples of recent capstone and case study projects for our DBT and OTT students that really showcase how you can integrate evidence as part of your activities in your profession. And so while I know these cases are a little bit specific to the DBT and OTT students, they are good representations of how to go about using the skills that you've been learning in EBP1 and EBP2 in real practical scenarios. And so hopefully we try to be a little bit broad in the selection of the topics so that even if you are not in those professional programs, they do have information that would just be interesting and relevant regardless of your specific professional area of expertise or interest. So going into the final project. I can get my slide to switch here. The goals of the final project are really to, hopefully, as you'll see, it cumulatively builds off of the things that we've been doing in EBP1 and EBP2. So we're going to do a more integrated practice of evidence identification, evidence appraisal, and evidence synthesis. We are going to focus on doing this in the form of intervention type of articles. We want you to practice concisely communicating in written form and in presentation form, sort of this process of evidence identification, evidence appraisal, and evidence synthesis. And then just in general, practice sort of evaluating the evidence synthesis and summaries, and we're going to have you do that in a presentation form. So this is worth 30% of your total grade, and it's really broken down into 3 specific parts. One part is what we're calling the portfolio, which I'll cover in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. One part is an e-poster, which I'll also cover a little bit more. And then the third part is the recording of a presentation, which will use your e-poster as sort of the backdrop and the information that'll also be provided in your portfolio to have you deliver it out loud in a recorded format. So I'll cover each of those parts separately here. So what you'll end up turning in, well, you'll turn in a portfolio, and this will be turned in as a group, your e-poster, which will also be turned as a group, and a recorded video presentation. It'll be about 5 minutes long, also turned as a group. So you won't be turning these in individually. We'll be setting up a Dropbox that offers it as a group, and then that, that file for each of those parts will be distributed among each of you so that when we post a grade, the grade will go to the entire group. And recognizing that this is a group effort, and we know that sometimes group efforts can be a little difficult, we just ask that, you know, we abide by the handbook and that we try to be good colleagues with one another and each do our part. But if, you know, concerns should arise, please feel free to reach out to the instructors. We're happy to help support group dynamics and really make sure that everybody's getting out of the class what they need to get out of the class. So getting started on the final project, we are going to be working during our next synchronous session to really form the groups. We've gotten some ideas from you through some topics. We have some ideas from the past. And what we're going to have is a list of grouped topics. And when you arrive to the next session, we will ask you to select among the list that we have, rename yourself in accordance with the list of topics so that when we go to put you in breakout rooms, it'll be in the group topic that is an area of interest for you. And we'll go over that a little bit more next week. But while in your breakout rooms, we're going to have you work as a group to select a PICO question, or you can also use the PCC question format if you prefer, to really establish sort of a clinical question that your group is going to cover related to that topic. As a group, you'll be asked to perform a systematic search using the skills from EBP1 and some of what we've also developed here in EBP2. We'll ask you to load that search into Covidence, which is the software you're going to learn about here in a little bit, and to use a reference manager that you'll also learn about here as part of your recorded videos. We want you to really take good notes throughout this whole process on the decisions that your group is making along the way and the rationales to support these decisions. And we want you to use a Prisma flowchart to track your article selection steps. In a case you aren't, that's not ringing a bell because I didn't actually put it in the systematic review lecture, but hopefully by now, as you've seen a few of these in the systematic reviews, this will be pretty familiar. This is sort of what a Prisma flowchart looks like. All it does is it really talks through sort of what happened in your search process. You got this many articles, you removed this many duplicates, you screened this many records in terms of their title and their abstract, and then ultimately you selected this many articles for critical appraisal. And then if you were to go through the full thing, which we're only going to be doing a modified sort of systematic review here, but if you were to go through a full thing, you'd also have a box around the reasons that articles were excluded and ultimately not included. But we're going to kind of stop at that eligibility piece because you'll hear in a few minutes here, we don't have the time and we're not asking you all to do a full systematic review as your groups. We're just kind of doing each of the steps in sort of an initial layer of the systematic review synthesis process. Okay, so specific to the final project portfolio, there is a rubric posted on Carmen which outlines the specific parts that we'll be looking for you to include in your portfolio. So take a look at that. Let us know if you have any specific questions. But basically, after you load your search into Covidence, your group should then identify articles that you'll want to review. So this is a modified systematic review process, like I mentioned. So you don't need to go through all of the articles in Covidence, but we are asking that you do load them in. And then you only really need to go through the selection process enough that you'll find articles that meet your inclusion and exclusion criteria, such that you'll have enough articles that will be appropriate for appraisal relative to the number of people you have in your group. The groups we do expect will be of different sizes. So you can have a group of 2, you can have a group of 10. You can have, it all depends on sort of how you all want to work. We're going to give you a little autonomy in deciding what that looks like. Obviously, with a larger group, you have more dynamics to deal with. With a smaller group, you'll have less conversation among people, which may not make it as interesting, and you'll have a total of a fewer number of articles you'll review, so you won't get as in depth into the topic of choice. But in the interest of making sure that everybody can complete this assignment on time and can do it such that it works with their own personal schedule, the group minimum will be 2, and there will not necessarily be a group max cap. But we would like to, kind of work with you if you have a really large group to plan how you'll do that. So for example, if you had a group of 5, you need to find 5 articles, and each article will then be subsequently appraised by 2 group members. For the critical appraisal process, you may select any type of critical appraisal tool form that you'd like. So we've gone over a number in this class. We used Cincinnati Children's, we've used Sign, or the Joanna Briggs, but there are a number out there, as we've talked about before. You are free to choose whatever appraisal tool you want, as long as you recognize that you need to pick a tool that matches the article type that you're looking at, so you can actually have a good a good basis of questions to go from as you appraise it. Happy to answer any questions as you go through this process as well. But the point is that you're going to have the number of articles that your group will select will be equal to the number of people in your group, and each person in that group will appraise 2 articles. So ultimately then, when you go to put your portfolio together, you should have 10 critical appraisal documents completed and included in your portfolio. And if you look at the rubric, this will become a little more clear. It kind of walks you through the different pieces of the portfolio. But the appraisal process will just be added to the notes that you take relative to the search strategies that you used, sort of the Prisma diagram that you put together based on your search and selection processes. And then the next step of the portfolio will be to really think about how are you going to synthesize the information around the articles your group appraises into some form of, interpretation and concluding statements. So we want to see your notes and your thought processes in your group about talking how these articles relate or don't relate to each other and how they will ultimately be tied to the question that you posed as part of your group topic selection. So based on the articles that you've now appraised, we do expect you to make some sort of recommendation about the intervention based on the articles you selected. So this is kind of linking a little bit more to that clinical practice guideline realm where often you'll see these evidence grades. So we want you to make a recommendation statement, and we want you to provide an evidence grade, and we want you to provide the rationale for that evidence grade. So do you think that based on what's out there relative to your question, there's conflicting evidence? Do you think there's weak evidence? Do you think there's moderate evidence, or there's strong evidence to support whatever you're saying? And obviously this is our own made up grading system for this class. We talked about some different ones, and just in the case of this project, this is the grading scale we want you to provide. So you're going to pick A, B, C, or D, and then provide a rationale. And then we want you to ultimately compile all the steps of this portfolio into a single PDF document and upload that one document as a group into the Carmen page. And that's what we'll be grading. We'll be grading that file for the entire group. The next phase is we want you to develop a really succinct, visually appealing e-poster of the key components in your portfolio. And so we'll be providing a template for this. This is very similar to what you might be expected to now do if you were to present at a professional conference. Or I would imagine some of your classes may actually be having you start to develop e-poster templates. This is something that's very common. You do have the flexibility to make it as visually unique as you would like. You don't have to follow the exact columns, headers, or anything like that. That is up to you. We're just giving you the starting point of the slide to work from. And then after that, it's up to you to present the information that you think is most important to present in the way that you think it's most interesting to present it. There is also a e-poster rubric, so check that out so you can sort of see what we'll be looking for when we grade it. And again, here, you're going to submit one poster for the entire group. And then the final thing is here, we want you to develop a succinct video recording presentation of your e-poster. We want this to be about 5 minutes. Don't go too long, don't go too short, just enough to give us the key highlights, almost as if you were presenting this at a professional conference. Again, we have a rubric for this as well, so you can look at that for some specific details on the expectations. And just so you're aware, we're not expecting everyone in the group to have, a voice in the presentation, but we do expect everyone to help with the presentation, to be available to support the recording, editing, making sure that it's representing the group well. So you might have somebody who really likes to present and they can present the whole 5 minutes, but it shouldn't be on them to identify the exact content that's going to be presented. The whole group should be working together on what is actually going to be verbally delivered during that presentation. And again, here, you're just going to submit one recording per group. So we still have a number of weeks left in the class, and we do have still several more didactic lectures to go through. But throughout this, we're going to start sprinkling in opportunities through asynchronous weeks where you can work together in your group in a way that we can support you best as instructors. So what will be happening is during the in-class hours on the asynchronous weeks, we will be available as instructors to answer questions. And we will also be available to put your group in a breakout room so that you can have a group meeting during that class time to start to work on this project together. So you do not have to attend that week, but we do recommend it because it's a great opportunity for you to, ask questions of the instructors as needed. And also because this is kind of a designated time on the grid for the DPT students anyway, and for the rest of most of our majority of our class, this does work out well as a time for gathering. For our students who are not able to attend the asynchronous sessions, we just ask that you make sure you form a group. And if you have trouble doing that, let us know, form a group and, work your way through the project as described as best as you can, and just reach out to us as needed so that we can support your group development here. We are happy to make appointments outside of these class hours. You just need to let us know so that we can make sure that we can be available as you need us. And then also please feel free to ask questions via the Carmen inbox messaging tool. Again, as always, it is really helpful if you copy all the instructors on that inbox message so that one of us, whoever gets in there first, can answer it and all of us can see that response so that we all stay on the same page and you get consistent answers across the questions that are asked. And so with that, that is the overview of week 5 here in the final project. We just asked that next week, which will be a synchronous session, that you come prepared with any remaining questions or any specifics that you might have before we really embark on this final project journey.